Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Thank you for attending this webcast sponsored by Alumni Services at SANS.edu. This is our third webcast in our newly launched professional development series offered to alumni and current students on a quarterly basis. Next slide, please. Here is our agenda for today. My name is Rebecca McMiniman, and I'll be starting off with a brief message to alumni. Next, I'll introduce Eric Patterson, Executive Director of SANS.edu, who will highlight a few exciting updates here at the school and also introduce our speaker. And then Russell will give a 45-minute presentation. During that time, please submit all questions using the GoToWebinar panel, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation as time allows. And in case you need to leave early, a video or a recording and copy of the slides will be available in your SANS.org dashboard under My Webcasts. I will also send a follow-up email to participants that will include a link to the recording and a short 3-question survey in case you'd like to share any feedback. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here we go. To kick things off today, I'd like to formally welcome our alumni in the audience. Through these educational opportunities, we hope to strengthen our community and enrich your professional lives, as well as contribute to the growth of a strong, well-informed cyber workforce. We also hope that you'll stay connected, so we've developed this website, sans.edu/alumni, for reference. Here you can update your contact info, request a transcript, connect on social media. You can also learn ways to continue your education. These perks include an annual course discount and a fast-track admissions process to any of our other SANS.edu programs. You can also learn how to get involved. Currently, we're looking for mentors who could help our undergrad students better understand the various career pathways in cybersecurity. If that sounds like you, please email me at alumni@sans.edu. And of course, we're always looking for ways to highlight your success, so please feel free to send us updates too. And lastly, we'll be on the lookout for an annual alumni survey coming soon. We'd like to learn more about you and your interests, so please help us by filling out the survey when you receive it. And now I'd like to turn it over to Eric Patterson, Executive Director at SANS.edu. Eric, please take it away.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever the time zone is where you are. I'd like to welcome you and, as Rebecca indicated, provide you with a quick update on the college. So first, the feather in our cap that all the staff, all the team is very, very excited about right now. Across the college, all of our programs, we've recently crossed through a significant milestone. We currently have over 1,000 students enrolled across our 7 programs. Some of you, the alumni here with us today, may remember a time when it was humanly possible to recall and maybe even know by sight, all of your peers in your program or in the college. I think now we've reliably left that behind in the rearview mirror. We're also just as equally proud of our over 400 alumni. And maybe at the other end of the spectrum with our newer, younger students, we're excited to announce the first graduate of our applied cybersecurity undergraduate certificate program. Just a brilliantly sharp young man who not only crossed the line first to graduate from that program, but did so with a simply outstanding GPA. We all look forward to see what that young gentleman goes on to accomplish in his professional career. As you're sitting probably, I'm guessing, at home right now listening to this, wanted to share just a few quick points on what we, the college, have done to respond to the coronavirus. First, we communicated to all of our students, as you've probably heard and become aware of already, that they have the option to shift away from what would have been upcoming live residential courses to either the on-demand asynchronous format or the new online synchronous format now known as live online. Or some of our current students are just deferring courses altogether for the moment while waiting for more live events to come back. More importantly, though, you may be hearing this here first, although the official details will come from GIAC. We've been actively working with GIAC to launch a new remote proctoring option so that our students can continue to take their exams and make progress in their program from their home, even in the future when it's your choice maybe to do so. We will be implementing remote proctoring in the very near future. We have several upcoming curriculum reviews as we continue to learn and grow and get feedback from students and instructors and industry experts. This coming year, we will be reviewing our core engineering certificate program and our incident response certificate program. And finally, if you haven't been to our homepage, SANS.edu, anytime recently, go there when you have a chance, and you'll see a new link near the top of that homepage where we have included connectivity to our, what we're calling for now, our distinguished student publications. A lot of our students write really great papers. Those all go to the SANS reading room. Some of those students have gone on to be published in external peer-reviewed journals. So we've compiled that list there and put them together. I'm really impressed with the quality of research that our students are doing now and over the past few years. Johannes Ulrich and our research committee have really guided that thing to a whole new level. So take a look at that when you can. Next slide, please. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce Russell Eubanks. Rebecca already gave you an understanding of this man's credentials and roles and work experience. I think I would want to introduce Russ today on a more personal level by saying that, all of us here today probably know at least a couple of really smart and successful people in our lives, either personally or professionally. We also probably know some of those smart and successful people who have, bought into their own PR, right? Smart and successful people often come with some hubris and some ego. If you've never met or had the pleasure of listening to Russell give a talk, you're in for a treat today. Russ is everything that Rebecca described, all the different roles and accomplishments, and yet one of the smartest, nicest, most humblest men that I've had the pleasure to speak to. So sit back and over the next 30 to 45 minutes, you're going to be at the knee of a kindly mentor who's going to share some just awesome experiences and advice with you. Russell, all yours.
Wow, that very, very kind and generous introduction. I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that Johannes reached out and asked if I'd be willing to, and of course I said yes, to be able to share some information with you, and really a privilege to spend time with you this afternoon, both alumni as well as current students in the STI program. I've always had a great deal of admiration for folks in the program, so for me to be able to spend some time with you is just a huge honor for me. So as always, I'd like to start off with kind of defining the problem and then taking us on a brief journey this afternoon around some things that have really given me a lot of concern. So up until last Friday, I was privileged to be CISO and CIO at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, very important organization these days with all the problems going on and challenges facing the nation. But when I was there was a few things that really captured my attention, and I'll talk about those in the form of the outline for today, but really want to kind of stir up and agitate the problem a little bit. Whatever the role, whether you're a CISO or you aspire to be or not, I think we all have, and true to the STI mission, we all have opportunity to be a leader in some or maybe many capacities. And in that, one of the things that I really focused on was what are some things, a very small set of things that only I, as the security leader, could do. And I hope that this will kind of inspire you to think about places where you can make an even more profound impact on the communities that you're privileged to lead, if not secure, in your respective mission. I wish these were things that someone had done for me. So I didn't have a how to be a CISO manual. I didn't have a things to do or not do, but it's really a collection of things that have resonated with me and I believe led to a lot of success that I've been privileged to enjoy over my cyber career. And I tell you, the next to the bottom bullet point there, the get wisdom as cheaply as you can. That's something, it's a hat tip to someone who gave me the best cyber advice I've ever been given. And it is just that, get wisdom as cheaply as you can. Someone who has nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with cyber, but gave me a desire to, how can I really apply lessons learned from someone else's lessons and avoid similar fate in my personal life and my growth plan, as well as in how I lead. And so hopefully you can use this construct, use these ideas for ways to, whether again you want to be a CISO or not. I think a lot of these ideas in visibility can help resonate with you as well. And so what does that look like? Well, there's 10 gaps. I've made a 3-step plan to kind of talk about what that plan is, maybe a little clever little way to think about or remember what that plan is, and then some actionable steps for each of those 10. As well as at the end, I want to give you some things that you can do on a time basis over and over and over again, whatever your gaps might be in your organization, to help solve for those things on purpose. So with that, let's talk about the first one. The first one for me, and as we're looking at these visibility, gap number 1, your compliance requirements. We all have to do something. You're in credit card business, to process, store, or transmit credit cards. PCI, the payment card industry, says you have to do some things. If you're in healthcare, HIPAA says you have to, or you get to do certain things. Publicly traded companies, they get to do Sarbanes-Oxley. Government organizations get to follow at least NIST 853, if not other documents that say, in order to secure a federal information system, here are the things that you must do. And so as you look at these, you can have this list of good things to do, and compliance helps us answer the question, are we doing the good things? Well, how do we think about that? Well, as it turns out, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and about 20 miles west of downtown, there's an amusement park, and that amusement park has a name, and the name is Six Flags Over Georgia. Probably wherever you are in the United States, if not around the world, there's not too far from you an amusement park. And as you know, the amusement parks have certain requirements. What are the requirements? Well, to ride on rides like pictured here, you have a certain requirement. And it's one that says you must be this tall to ride. I choose to think of compliance as that sign at Six Flags Over Georgia that says, don't be any shorter. You can be taller, just don't be any shorter. So that's how I'm thinking about those. And I'm not mad at compliance requirements. Probably many of us have a job because there's been compliance requirements that are in place. Instead, so what I think about is, okay, since I have to do that, what's a critical question around that? Well, the first one's kind of cute and it relies on the previous picture there. Is your company tall enough to ride this ride? Now, it would be ideal, I suppose, if I gave you the question and the answer. I'm just going to give you the questions. The question here is for the compliance requirement or requirements, probably more likely, that you have, that you get to strive towards. Are you doing those good things? I hope so, and I want that for you. And if not, there should probably be a plan to get to and resolve those gaps that might be in place. But there's actually more. And more here says, for some things, is it possible, is it probable, is it maybe best practice to say going beyond those particular requirements? A particular requirement that comes to mind to me every single time I think about compliance is, in NIST 853, there's a requirement, one of over 300 things to do. And that requirement says do a vulnerability scan once a quarter. Now, that's a good thing. We've learned about that. We know why that's a good thing to do. Do it once a quarter, and you get your pretty green checkbox that says, congratulations, you've done that good thing. And then maybe you move over to do some other good things. Maybe, though, just maybe, it's not acceptable to wait up to 90 days in particularly sensitive network segments that you're privileged to lead and support and defend, to have to wait that long. what would it look like to leverage your compliance requirements that you have to move to a new realm of security assurance? Not for everything, but for some things. There are places where you could leverage that and do good work as a result. That's the questions that we have here. So again, your compliance requirements as the first one. The second visibility gap here is looking at all the security tools that you have. The antivirus things, the endpoint things, the server things, the network things, all the things that you have in place, all the tools that are in your proverbial toolbox. We have tools. What I want to do is draw your attention back to the business case. The business case, a 2, 3, 4, or 5-page document that you or someone on your team before you use to cast vision for the reason for having that particular tool. Maybe it helps you see more things or have more visibility or respond to incidents faster, stronger, and better. Or maybe it's because, like in PCI, where it says you have to do antivirus. That's one of the 12 things that had to be done. Maybe you did it because the compliance thing told you to do that. And that's an example. But as you look at that, have you ever wondered how effectively are we as security leaders and security practitioners giving our business the intended business value that was in the business case that we used to propose, let's have this particular tool that's in place? And when's the last time that we checked on those tools? We have antivirus. Well, what type of assurance do we have that antivirus is up and running on all of our systems and not, say, on most of our systems? And I think there's to me, a definitive hook to critical control number 1 here that says on all the hardware things that we have, how can we use that as an informative reference as we want to have assurance that all those security tools are installed and active and updating and working on our given systems? So, again, based in Atlanta, so there's a picture of Delta 787. And the way I think about this, the last time, and who knows when the next time I'll get on a Delta jet, who knows when the next we'll get to travel like we used to, but not that far ago. But the last trip I took was on a large aircraft like this. And as I get on the plane, I look to my left, I can see the pilot and the co-pilot. They've got instruments here, the instruments that tell them navigation, communication, radar, communication, all the things that they need in order to do their job. Just like a Delta pilot, they have all the information that they need to do their job, the systems, all the supporting team members to help them be successful, to take me from Atlanta to wherever I might go next. And I never questioned them. I just figure they need to have that in order to do their job. But with us as security practitioners, do we have the information that they have? Do we have everything we need in order to do our job? A dashboard of sorts that can let us make sure that all the tools that we have are working and operational. Things like, taking that a little bit farther to say, what if we had an agent health dashboard? A system or a set of systems or a place to log into or a console or whatever it is, where you can check on all the tools that you have that can start to answer several questions that'll serve a lot of value here. Just like the Delta pilots, is that agent installed? Is it checking in every few hours? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Getting the policy updates, updates of the agents, all that information that can equip us as security professionals to make sure that we have and can respond to any gaps in coverage, any gaps in assurance that we need in order to defend our respective organizations and do so much better. So again, another way to think about visibility that we need to have in order to do our jobs, visibility to make sure that we have all the information we need to be successful. And the next thing to look at is our strategic plan. So again, as a longtime security leader, one of the guiding principles for me was having a strategic plan, one that says, I recognize our current state, our capabilities, our team members, our function, our alignment to supporting the business that we're supporting in an information security team. And having a plan that says, I see where we're at, I know where we're at, and something on the inside tells me, you know what, I'm not satisfied. I want more. I want more for our organization. I want more growth and development opportunities for our team members, capabilities to give us better assurance than what we have right now. And oftentimes it's a strategic plan that lets us cast vision for what would a brighter future look like tomorrow. And so as we think about that, you know, here we are working on and looking on our strategic plans. How do we know that we're on track? How do we know that our plan is serving us well? How do we know that with 79 days left in Q2 of this year that we're on track? I mean, we can make plans. Maybe we went to an offsite meeting. Maybe we had someone facilitate that meeting that says, okay, for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to work on these things. What checkpoints could be put in place to make sure that you know that you're on track? And if you're not on track, if you're off track for some reason, what are some remediations that could be done as a result of that? And so questions to look at this, there's, you know, again, it's just the question. I can't give you the answer, but the questions are, you know, when did you last check on your strategic plan? What's in there? Is there alignment to objectives, bonus plans, incentive plans? What would it look like? A simple, no-cost way to have recurring calendar alerts every Friday, maybe every last Friday of every month that prompts questions of how are we doing? If there were to be a status or a dashboard or some communication around that, what's a way that we could know and be reminded and check up on that so that we can have the benefit of the rest of the quarter, the rest of the year, to be able to change our priorities and focus on the things that, at least in our offsite planning sessions, perhaps we determined as our most important things to do. Great book from John Maxwell, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. This is a place in particular where the better you are at asking questions, the more likely you are to be able to understand and be able to respond to and remove any roadblocks that might exist for yourself, for your team, your organization at achieving the success planned out for and called out by your strategic plan. Next, visibility gap number 4. So 4 out of 10 things that have resonated with me and things that I've used to focus on intentionally. This one is your team. Especially if you're a security leader, you know, what are things that only you as a CISO can do? When I think about that, I'm often reminded of this concept of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost says, if I spend an hour on this project, I'm not going to be able to spend that same hour on other projects. My time is limited. How can I limit how I'm doing the things and focusing on my particular objectives? Thinking about that with opportunity cost. In there, recognizing, are there places where I should be spending my time at as compared to where I am spending my time? For me, what I would do on my commute to work is this. I get in my car, turn on a podcast. I always start off with the Storm Center's podcast every morning to think about, you know, what are the things I should be focused on? What are things that I can ask my team about? Are they aware of? Are they detecting? Are they responding to? And then as I'm making my 45+ minute commute from my home to my office, I would say, okay, what are things that only I can do? There's a lot of things I could do. In the past, I did some incident response, put together incident response teams, did a lot of response there, deployed a lot of technology, a lot of different things I could do. But in my role as the leader of the security team, there are certain things that if I didn't do them, no one else would be able to do those. So as entertaining as it would be, as fun as it might be to go try to take over and run an incident, if I do that, is opportunity cost. I don't get to do something else. And I also rob the chief of our incident handling team and all the other folks that he's privileged to lead to understand and respond to and be better at responding to incidents that occur at my company. So on the way to work, what can only I do? And truly on the way home every day, which is usually much longer a commute from downtown Atlanta, how much time did I spend doing the things that only I could do? So truly every day, on the way down, on the way back, I'm doing a miniature retrospective review that says, how well did I do that? Now, things come up. I can't always do and achieve those, but I want to take a pattern and take an intentional time to think about what are places where I can help my team, help them become even more successful in their career goals and objectives. And again, you're thinking about that, what can only you do? One of the hacks that I've given to my team there is what I coined a cafeteria test. And I totally made up, not heard anyone talk about it before, but it's worked well for me, and it's worked well for the leaders that I have the privilege of leading at the day job. And it's this: hey, when you go to the cafeteria, and you should always take a break, go get some lunch, recharge, etc. As you walk to the cafeteria, before you try to decide, do I get pizza or a salad or a cheeseburger or whatever you get, be very in tune to when someone sees you, do they want to walk towards you? Or when someone sees you, do they say, oh my God, there's Russell, he says no all the time, he doesn't help me with my problems, I'm gonna just like walk away and hope he doesn't see me. Or when they see me, they'll say, oh, there's Russell, he works in the security team and he helps me with my problems. I want to see how's he doing, what are the things he's working on, can you give me an update, because he's a valuable partner to my respective business. Again, that cafeteria test. When people encounter you, do they walk towards you or do they walk away from you? Again, the practical way that you can determine what's the engagement of you and your team with the key business areas and business leaders in particular. And you can use that litmus test to see, do we need to change something? How are we showing up? How are we adding value or not in our respective organization? So some areas here to focus on with your team. How can you help them? Sometimes helping them means staying out of their way, leaving them alone, not checking on them all the time, or some people say micromanaging them. How can you stay out of their way? I say that to my team all the time. How can I help? And if help means leave you alone for a week, say the word and I will do that. Because the last thing I would want to do is to slow down their progress. One of the questions that I have there on the bottom bullet point here, what's the answer to their alarm clock question? This is a question that I use quite a bit in interviewing, as in every time I interview someone, I do quite a bit of that. I'll ask them this question. And the question is this: what projects, what programs, what initiatives, when you know you get to work on it the next day at work, are you so excited that you literally wake up before the alarm clock goes off? Now, why do you think I asked that question? Well, I want to know their passion. What do they love? What are they excited about? What are they so curious about that they're going to dig in and focus on and not rest, proverbially, until they get that problem figured out? It tells me, it gives me a clue into things that are important to them. And it helps me as a leader make sure that I can do everything possible to help position them to be successful at spending their time in the things that give them great joy. Visibility gap number 5, again, thinking of the Delta pilots. How can we give and equip all security leaders and all security practitioners with ideas of areas of focus for them? The next one is looking at the culture of not only the organization, but specifically at your information security team. It's really a question of engagement. How engaged are they? How focused are they? How aligned are they towards the mission of their department, of their team, of their organization? Is there a place, is there a way or a mechanism so that you could really know how they're showing up? And it looks different in different companies based on the industry, based on the requirements, based on the bureaucracy I've seen. A lot of things go into that. But as you think about the culture, what's working, what's not working? What are the things that would be successful or viewed as positive, and then areas where perhaps it just didn't feel right or it didn't show up the way that what you'd expected or you would expect out of your teams? And so as you're looking at these, these questions that come up again. What's it like to walk through the halls of your organization from an organizational cultural perspective? When folks are walking around, are they talking? Are they engaging? Are they curious? Do they turn away? Do they kind of duck into the side hallway? I was famous for, I always got up early because of my commute, but get up early, walk in the door, go through all the security to get into the day job, and someone would look at me and say, Russell, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Very common, kind of questions that you get at the beginning of the day. And my answer was always the same. And it was always the case that people would laugh at me when I told them the answer to, how are you doing? How's your day? How was your weekend? And my answer truthfully was, I tell you, I'm living the dream. I get to work here. I get to lead a large team at a very important organization. I'm living the dream. And folks would laugh at me. Oh, you're not. You're supposed to hate your job. You're not supposed to want to be here. You want to be not here and enjoy the things you do when you're not here. But I remember 25 years ago working in a factory. My job was to work on a heavy piece of equipment, very dangerous, very hot, very sweaty, very gross kind of a job. It was a good job, nothing wrong with it at all. But I said to myself, I don't think I want to be here the rest of my working career. And so I did things. I was fortunate to work at an organization that gave me tuition reimbursement, that paid me to go to school or pay for my school fees so I could go to school at no expense to myself, because I thought, I think I want a little bit more. And I tell that little story because that's what I want for you, is not to work in a factory, but to love what you do so much that it becomes contagious, contributing to the culture of your organization, contributing to the culture of your team, so that you can show up and have that example. Another way to look at this is there positive and favorable support for your security program, or do you not quite enjoy that? Again, questions to ask to determine how well are you at those visibility gaps. Again, gap number 5, culture. Well, the good news is halfway through with these, so just 5 more to go and then some wrap up with that. But as we look at this, the next one is your brand. Your brand. Yep, you. How do you show up? Do you show up like you care, or is it just another meeting? Do you prepare for conversations and meetings and presentations and business cases and all the things that you do, or not? And I heard a statement from someone many years ago, statement of what's it like to be on the other side of me? What's it like to be on the other side of me? And so if we flip that over, not just how do you show up, you have high energy, but how do others experience you? How do you make them feel when you engage with them, when you communicate with them, when you try to help them, when you try to tell them to stop clicking on things, or whatever you tell people to do when you do the things that you do at your day job? What does that look like? What does it look like? What's your brand? What are you known for? What's your reputation? Is it where you want it to be? Should it be made better? That's the question I have for you. And so how do you think about that? What are some of the critical questions? Again, what's it like to be on the other side of you? When you leave the boardroom, when you leave working with or briefing your leadership team or whoever your boss and leaders would be, what is it like? One of the best topics I've seen in series of discussions of this came from Alan and John when they did several talks year over year, both webcast as well as talks at RSA conference, around interviewing CISOs or security leaders before, during, and after they gave a board presentation. What are some of the things that they noted? What are some of the things that they communicated around that can help the leader and help the board better understand the value from that? What's so curious to me, I think for me, the number one finding from the report and the work that they've done, again, all this freely available from the RSA side and the SANS webcast archive side as well. The number one question that stuck with me is this: what do you think the board talks about as soon as the CISO leaves their briefing? And of course, the answer is the CISO, as in, is Russell the right person for this job? Does he know what he's talking about? Is he telling us new and different things, or is it consistent with the last briefing that he gave? And it's fascinating to me to think about how I would prepare and go deliver and give a particular message and then figure out what's done. But in fact, on the other side of me was questions from a governance perspective of, do we have the right guy leading our security program? Again, something to think about with respect to the brand that you have and you enjoy, or you might want to work on as a result. Next visibility gap that you might have is your peers. Example here, as it turns out in Atlanta, there's about 6.5 million people that live here. I've said for a while that Atlanta's full. There's no more room for more people. Traffic's horrible. It's a really bad thing to do. So I say Atlanta's full. But even in a city of 6.5 million people, I've done things on purpose. Joined different CISO communities, different IT communities, and security communities that I'm privileged to be able to know my peers at many of the large organizations across the city of 6.5 million people. It's helped me. It has caused me to be a better leader. I've got to learn and get wisdom as cheaply as I can from them. And hopefully your experience, whether a student or as an alumni especially, being able to meet and learn and get wisdom from your colleagues at STI has been another place where you can have peer leadership and leadership from your peers to make you the best version of yourself as well. Places that you can do this, industry events, ISACs. I've been very privileged to be a part of different information sharing and analysis centers, both financial services as well as communications, and before that, healthcare, to learn from people that do the same thing I do, but maybe from my competitor instead of from a friend I just happened to meet. And I think that there's great opportunity to learn from each other. InfraGard meetings, Secret Service is compelled to every quarter have an Electronic Crimes Task Force meeting, or ECTF. STI webcasts just like this to help us learn from each other and realize that we're not out there on our own, but we all, whatever companies we work at, we can learn from each other, apply that learning, and make our organizations much more secure as a result. So what are some of the questions we can look at here? In this case, from a leadership perspective, how many CISOs are on your speed dial? When you think about engaging with a new vendor or a new product that the vendor sends you emails or t-shirts from, and you're saying, should I get that? It's my strong recommendation that you reach out to others in a trusted community that you've created or cultivated or participated in to ask questions of how well did you enjoy using that vendor's product. And some questions that can help you here are, when's the last time you reached out for help? As well as, how long has it been since someone has asked you for that type of help? What are they learning? What vendors are they using? Even the last bullet point here I found to be very effective. You got to check with your HR and make sure you're not breaking any laws or concerns there. But questions such as, hey, that person who's on your team who wants to join my team, if you were given a chance to rehire them, would you do it? Asking questions as you're considering adding people to your team, probably you know someone that knows that someone who wants to join your team. How can you leverage that? You can leverage that by being a part of and participating in a community of your peers. So the next area to look on is your budget. And really, this one's looking at financial stewardship. How well are you in tune with the business needs in your organization? Or said another way, do you know who your chief financial officer is and what their expectations of you as a leader of your security team has? I'm privileged to be working on right now a one-day class that can help STI students better appreciate that, not to become an accountant, but to understand the concerns and the paradigms and the expectations of finance leaders on all departments, and especially from a cybersecurity perspective. What I've found is that when I have a good relationship, if not a great relationship, with the CFO and the controller and others who have responsibilities for the budget, I can know what their priorities are better. I can meet, if not exceed, their expectations better, and be a better partner, a better financial steward to them as well as to my organization. How can I do that? Well, asking different data points. Hey, what keeps you, the CFO, up at night? You know, if we take many of the questions that people ask us as security professionals and ask those questions of others, maybe we can start to see those and understand and appreciate their paradigm much more than without. What trends over time? Is there any seasonality in budgeting? You know, is there a certain time of the year that people take vacation or go to training, or maybe your departments aren't able to bill hours, if that's a requirement in your organization. Being able to understand that, predict that, explain that, and be able to tell that story really is helpful to help not just keep the bad guys out or the APTs out, but to be a great financial steward to your respective organization as well. And doing that on purpose and by design. Next to the last one to talk about is your time. Again, how much time are you spending doing things that only you can do? Asking that question over and over again, perhaps every day, whatever your commute is. Maybe if it's my commute now is going from upstairs to downstairs to the basement. So it's a very short commute right now, and probably is that way for all of us during this season. But while we're doing that, having a checklist that says of all the things that could be done, what are the things that only I could do? On the way to work, on the way home, and then being true to yourself and asking that question of, does that make me feel good? I feel like I'm doing a good job for my time stewardship or not? As I'm thinking about these things, how can I make sure that I'm adding the most value possible to myself, to those that I'm privileged to lead, to my leaders and their expectations that they have for me as a information security leader as well? And some of the questions here that I can't see, and I don't need to see your calendar, but if I could see your calendar, what does it look like? Are you double booked, triple booked? In the past, I've been quadruple booked at the same period of time to go to different meetings. Is it a hot mess like that? Or do you have time to focus on things that matter? A trick or hack that I have been very successful with is learning a statement, you know, what gets scheduled gets done. So what would it look like to carve off time every Friday afternoon and just block it off on your calendar that says, you know what, I'm busy. I can't meet right now. You'll have to find another time. And you don't have to put in there that you're working on things that only you can work on. You're hitting deadlines to make sure that your boss is really happy with you and pleased with the things that you're doing. It's just the intentional time that you've carved off to make sure that you can be focused on the things that matter the most, and ideally avoid being at work more than 50 or 60 hours a week, focusing on those priorities. What are the things that only you can do? And then asking yourself the question of, is the thing I'm about to do the thing that's the most important for me to be able to do, or not? And a lot of times we talk about, work-life balance. I think it's kind of a myth. And I think there's surges of you work a whole lot, you don't work a whole lot. But if you're not careful, you're going to have a career of going to meetings. What I've decided is I don't want to have this conversation with my boss. And I've actually said this to my boss. I said, I don't want to come back to you at the end of the year and say, hey, boss, I'm glad that I get to work for you. I work at a great organization. You'll be happy to know I went to 492 meetings last year. Isn't that great? I went to 492 meetings. Probably my leader, probably your leader, wants much more from you than that. However, If you're not careful, if you're not guarding your time, if you're not doing things like time blocking to give yourself Friday afternoon or whatever time makes sense for the cadence in your organization, all you're going to do is go to meetings, and you're not going to get the results that are necessary to be successful. Which leads me right to the very last one. The last visibility gap I wanted to talk about today was your growth. Bullet point number 2 came from John Maxwell. He tells a story you could go to the internet and hear or read about early on in his career. Someone looked at him and said, "John, what's your growth plan?" And John Maxwell talks about the fact that he didn't have one. And it took him about 3 or 4 minutes of talking and saying a bunch of words to finally admit, you know what? In fact, I don't have a growth plan. But he talks about the journey that he went on to make sure that he's intentionally growing and developing into the leader that his company needed him to be. So I say that to ask you this question. Again, I don't have the answer.
Russell, I think we lost your audio.
Okay, now is it back?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for that. I've got a lavalier that I'm using, and it was in my pocket. I didn't see that the screen went off. So thanks for that so much, Rebecca. So I appreciate that. I must have bumped it as I was getting excited talking about a growth plan. So how do you know that? What are some of the things that you can do? Reading, a podcast, asking other leaders, looking at ways for how can you intentionally get to where you want to be. As it turns out, the leader, the security professional that you were last year is not what your company needs and expects, if not demands today. What is it that you can do to grow and develop yourself? Again, questions here. Are you becoming the CISO that your company deserves? Are you becoming the security leader, security professional that your company deserves? Again, the truth is who you were last year. That's so last year to think about what your company needed from you last year. What are you doing to invest in yourself? Self-care is very important, especially these days of, maybe you have an alarm, or I've got an Apple Watch at 50 minutes into every hour, it's going to vibrate my arm and it's going to say, "Hey, Russell, you've been sitting down for 50 minutes. What are things that we can put in place to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves holistically and not just looking at a computer screen all the time? And then the question here, the last question for you, what's the last thing, and again, it's rhetorical, don't answer, what's the last thing you did to grow and grow on purpose? Again, for me, 10 questions that I wanted to look at and 10 visibility areas that for me, I have focused on, I have spent a lot of time focusing on to make sure that I could understand and focus on the things that only I could do. So just in summary, what are those things that just happen to be in order? Areas that I want to draw your attention to and cause you to think about and maybe invest some time at to make yourself the very best security professional you can be. So last section of things I wanted to talk about is things that you can do in the next 3 sets of time. So what can you do next week? Well, I think that next week, and maybe it's harder to do now, you have to do it over Zoom versus in person, is that cafeteria test. When you join that Zoom meeting, do folks say, "Oh, there's Russell, he helps me," or, "Oh man, there's Russell, I hope he doesn't talk to me." Is there nonverbal cues that you can use now, and even more so when we get to go back to our respective day jobs? Ask for feedback, not just and don't accept feedback of "good job" or "that was a great presentation," but think questions like, what did you like the most? What should I do differently? Tell me more. And what I found is when you can find 2 or 3 trusted colleagues and you tell them in advance, "Hey, I'm going to give a presentation to STI this afternoon. And I want you to listen and give notes. And at the end, I want you to tell me what I could do better. And you prepare them for that. And then when you respond to whatever their feedback is, you thank them. And it's tough for us to do. Sometimes you close your mouth and you open your ears and you become grateful. Over time, you can develop relationships like that, where you can give and receive feedback like that to make you a better communicator in that particular example. So things you can do next week, but next month. Well, what if you went to your calendar, like right now, and said, next month, I'm going to look at one of those gaps. Maybe you don't have any of the gaps that I talked about. Maybe you have all those gaps, but pick one, whether it's yours or one that came from my conversation with you today, and focus on that. And then every month, work on and focus on and make it a little bit better, close the gap a little bit more. And then finally, next year, having monthly calendar reminders to find more gaps, and then look for places to become the very best version of yourself possible. You can get there intentionally, you can get there if you focus on it, but you'll never get to a destination. You'll never drift to a destination if you're choosing. Highly encourage you to think of how this might resonate, how this might be applied to your respective day job, so that you could be the very best leader for your respective organization. And great news, slide number 42, how'd that work out? Information about me. I'll be happy to take any questions, both now as well as anytime. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. All right, well, Rebecca, Eric, that's all I've got, minus any questions. Carol as well.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you for a great presentation. Tons of food for thought. We are waiting on questions. If anybody has a question, please enter it into the questions feature now. I'll give you a couple seconds here.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions for Eric Patterson or myself too, feel free to also put that in. We do have one. Gerald Eastman asks, what has been the hardest areas you found to focus on?
Yeah, the hardest area, I love the question. Thank you for that question. I'll go back to the very first month of me being the CISO at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the talk, is when I was there, not even a week or two, the first incident came in, and I was so excited. I wanted to be validated as, hey, good thing they hired Russell. He's a great leader here. I went in and I took over the incident response for the very first incident that happened. It was a common type of incident. We dealt with it pretty quickly and disposed of it and moved on. But I decided that I wanted to jump in and take over. And it was selfish of me. It was wrong of me. And I feel horrible about it. And it's over 5 years ago that this happened. That was, in one hand, something that maybe looking back, it was a good thing, because I'm talking about it 5 years later, and it caused me to really focus on, wait a second, while I could do that, while I could deal with that, while responding to incidents is just something I've done a lot of work in the past. At that time, at that moment, it was the worst thing to do, because it stood in the way. I kind of bullied my way into running an incident, reporting the status up to my leaders, versus supporting the team that was dedicated to responding to those incidents. So for me, the answer to that question is having a moment that says, you know what, I promise that I'm never going to do that to my team, or never do that for myself. And it really contributed to, that incident contributed a lot to me focusing on what are the things that only I could do as a result. But I would say that was probably the catalyst to my thinking around focusing on things that only I could do. And there's been plenty of things since then, you know, other examples, other mistakes, other successes that reinforce the need to focus on things that only I could do.
Were you Also, Russell, Brian says, thank you. A personal interest of mine at the moment is how do you best handle your task lists, your to-do list? Do you recommend an application to best handle tasks?
Yes, there's like a debate. Do you have an electronic task list or a paper task list? So 3, maybe 4 years ago, I switched over to a paper planner, and I've been focusing on that. And the idea being, what are 3 things that I need to do today? And at the end of every week, I do a retrospective review in it of all the things I plan to do for the week. How well did I do? It also gives me 52 built-in lessons learned or retrospective review opportunities to be able to do that. The planner I use, it's called the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt's companies. Been very successful at getting me away from the screen to write down and help my thoughts process as I write those tasks down. What I have started doing 2 years ago is I've got Evernote. I use Evernote quite a bit. I put tasks on my task list on Evernote instead of forwarding them from like every Monday to the next Monday to the next Monday in my written planner. I'll put them on my Evernote notebook, and I'll review those as a part of my weekly preview activities. And so it keeps me from having to write and forward so many tasks. And it also helps me prioritize of those open tasks, which one should I work on next. So that's my method, a combination of paper and an electronic task list. And again, it's helped me be very, very productive as a result.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Gerald Eastman also asks, do you have a preferred reading list on leadership?
Oh, I sure do. If you'll send me an email at the bottom of the slide there, I'll send you a list of all the books I've read for the last 4 years. And the reason I know it's been the last 4 years is 4 years and a day ago, I didn't read anything at all. And now I'm reading like crazy, especially leadership books. But I'd be happy to send you all the books I've read and kind of the summaries of them if you'd like. If you'll send me an email, I'd be happy to do that for you. John Maxwell, I've heard me reference before, a lot of his leadership books. John Gordon, Michael Hyatt stand out as prominent authors, and I spend a lot of time on their books, but I'd be happy to send you my full listing.
Russell, was it John Maxwell that you had mentioned earlier wrote Good Leaders Ask Good Questions?
Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. About 3 years ago, that book came out. And I've got it on my bookshelf in the next room. It really helped me not just ask questions that get a yes or no or a grunt answer, but ones that cause thought on the person I'm asking the question, and I can really dig in to better understand as a result. That book did a lot for me, being able to ask better questions, not just, again, yes/no questions. Good Leaders Ask Great Questions.
I'm going to pick that one up for sure. And let's see, Blaine says, thank you for an excellent talk. Could you contribute this material towards the ISE 5600 course? This would provide more concrete content for the leadership section of the master's program. Maybe that's a question for Eric.
I'm sorry, I assumed it was going to Russell. Could you repeat the question, Rebecca?
Sure. Blaine, who's an alumni, says, thank you for the excellent talk. Could you contribute this material towards the ISE 5600 course? That would provide more concrete content for that leadership section.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. Good idea. Russ, how about if I make a note to follow up with you, and we can maybe either review the slide deck or add in some of the reference material. We'll figure something out, okay?
Happy to, and I'll, as soon as we end, I'm going to send the materials to Carol and Rebecca and Eric. I think it'll be available in the archive as well, so it'll always be a reference to you. Okay.
In a few hours today, you can go back to the registration link for this webcast, and once you put in your information, you should see the slides populate for you, and then you can also watch the recording again. And I'm going to follow up with an email to all the participants today with a direct link to all of it. Okay, I think that's that time. We're at we're at time here. Thank you again so much, Russell, for this wonderful presentation. And to our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back for the next webcast. Thank you very much.